was asked to provide a video that shows the dramatic black and white landscape adjustments in Affinity. The last video I did it in Lightroom because I wanted to take advantage of some of the masking capabilities. So we're going to do this in Affinity, and you'll see some masking capabilities in Affinity, which are pretty slick. Starting from the basics, we have a fairly dark, dull image. So what we want to do is bring up the exposure until it's fairly well balanced in the histogram area. And that looks pretty good, but we do have a spike here. You can see we're blown out in the highlights. So we're going to come on down to shadows and highlights, and we're going to bring the highlights down until that blown out part is gone. All right, so we're in pretty good shape there. Next thing we want to do is convert it to black and white, and I'm going to bring up the reds a little bit to get kind of the edges, the lighter parts of the rock, and the yellows down to provide some slight contrast between the brightest parts and the next less brighter parts. And then for the sky, we're going to bring down the cyans and the blues, and that's going to darken up the sky quite a bit. And then from here, we're ready to start with the creative adjustments. So I'm going to hit the develop button, and this takes us into the Pixel Studio. Waiting for it to develop. All right, now that it is developed, we can begin. So I'm going to show you a pretty cool trick here. There is a capability that Affinity has that allows you to detect objects. And so we're going to take advantage of that. You'll see initially the cursor turns to a clock. Right now it's going out and detecting the objects in the scene. And once the cursor turns into a crosshair, you know it's complete. And as you move it around to different elements of the photograph, you'll see that it provides a zebra stripes there identifying the area. So let's start with the sky. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to create a selection. Now here's the cool part. When you have a selection made, when you add an adjustment, it uses that selection as a mask. So we're going to add, first of all, a curves adjustment to give us some dramatic contrast in those clouds. Okay. So that's good to start with. We can make other adjustments later. The nice thing about this is all these adjustments are non-destructive, so you can go back in and make changes. Now with that still selected, I'm then going to go in and I'm going to select the Clarity Live filter, and we're going to bump this up quite a bit. Again, further increasing that contrast and that dramatic look. All right, you'll notice here that the left side of the sky is much lighter than the right side. So we want to even that out a little bit, and we're going to use a linear gradient to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is add the adjustment we want, which is the brightness contrast. You can do it with curves. There's various ways you can do it, but this is probably the simplest. And then what we want to do is bring down the brightness until we get the left side looking about where we want it. And then from here, we're going to add a mask. Now that mask is a child of the brightness contrast adjustment. So any fills that we provide within that mask are going to affect the adjustment we just did. So we're going to add a linear fill. And of course, with the mask, we want to make sure that the dark side is where the adjustment does not come through, and the light side is where the adjustment does come through. So the left is already white, but we don't want the other side to be gray. We want that to be black. Okay, so as you can see, as we brought that over to black, this lightened up again to where it should be. So that's a fairly even gradient across the sky. So we're done there. What we want to now do is get rid of our selection, Control D, and we'll select all these adjustments and we're going to group them so we know that they're for the sky. So Control G, we have a group and we're going to call that sky. Now we want to take care of the rocks. So with our base layer selected, our background layer selected, we're going to go back to the object selection tool again. And this won't select all the rocks as one, so we have to do them one at a time. So once you've clicked the first rock, you want to make sure that the add button is selected. If we have the new button, then it's going to replace that. But we want the add button because we're going to continue to add the different rocks and elements to it. It's okay that there's spots in between that aren't selected because it doesn't need to be a 100% selection for this to work. Okay, I think we have everything we need here selected. So from here, again, we're going to add the adjustments we want. So we're going to add a curves layer. And here we will play with the contrast. We're looking for a dramatic contrast to get that effect that we want. We don't want to get too dark on those areas here. So let's just bring those up a bit. Bring that down. Okay. The next thing we want is to bring in some clarity. And we will bring that up. And the last thing I want to do with the rocks is to get a bit more of the edge definition in some of the texture in the rocks. So we're going to do that using a high pass filter. So we're going to grab high pass, and you'll see everything goes gray because that's really the high pass filter is separating the texture from the non-texture. So the higher the radius, that starts to bring in the edges of the textured area. So we don't want to go too high. We really want just the edges to stand out. Now, the next thing you need to do for this is to change that from normal to overlay or soft light. I like to use soft light because it's not quite as harsh as overlay. So as you can see here, we have the adjustments on the rocks. We're going to do a Control D to get rid of the selection. We're going to select all these layers and Control G to create a group. And we're going to call that rocks. Okay, we're almost done. The last adjustment I want to do is smooth out the water and add a bit of contrast. And what that'll do is it'll make it, like this actually was a slow exposure, but I would have liked to have been even slower, but it was a fairly bright day despite all the cloud cover. So I could only go so far with the shutter speed with the ND filter that I was using. So we want to smooth that out a bit. So we're going to select the water. And with the water selected, I want to add a clarity filter. And we're going to bring the clarity down this time to smooth things out. And we're going to go fairly low. It gives it that kind of ethereal, misty look. And then we're going to add contrast in because we don't want to lose the variations of the luminosity of the different areas of the water. So to keep it interesting. So we'll increase that contrast a bit. Here we go. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And the brightness I'm going to bring up just a bit, just to bring the overall brightness of the water up to give it that better contrast between the water, the sky, and the rocks. And then from here, we're going to deselect. We're going to grab these two adjustments. We're going to group them together, Control G, or Command G if you're on a Mac. And that is water. And the last thing is to add another global adjustment to give the overall image a vignette. So there is a live filter for vignette. We're going to grab that. I'm going to bring the exposure down just a bit. And the one thing about this vignette filter is it has fairly hard edges to start with. So we're going to bring the edges, the hardness down, smooth out those edges. And we probably don't need as much of the darkening. So we'll bring this back up a little bit. Okay, so that's that. So let's select all these adjustments and turn them off. So that's the original black and white, the flat black and white. And here's the dramatic black and white. And that's all there is to it. Thanks for watching. If you got something out of the video, please like it. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next video.